Yung exponential form, para maging siyang radical form, kokopyahin ang base tsaka yung numerator, tas lalagay mo siya sa loob ng radical sign. At yung buong yon ay tinatawag na radicand. Sa radical form, ang pagkakabasa ay nth root of a raised to the m power. Ang numerator na m ay power ng base na a at pwede rin siyang maging power ng entire radical expression. Para mas maintindihan natin, let's have an example. Ang instruction dito ay write each expression in radical form. First, we have 8 raised to third. Una, i-identify mo muna ang denominator at yun ang magiging index natin. Lalagay natin dun sa buntot ng radical sign. Kaya meron tayong the cube root ng 8, tsaka yung 2 magiging exponent siya sa radicand. Next example, 7 raised to 1 half. Same process lang sila. Kaya meron tayong the square of 7 raised to power. Ang index na 2 ay common and it's understood na ganyan na lang. At ang basa dyan ay the square root of 7 pa din. Dito na tayo sa write each expression in exponential form. Ang mga given dito ay puro radical expression na gagawin natin silang exponential form. First example, 5th root of 2 raised to 3. Kopyahin lang yung radicand na 2 cube. Pero yung 3 ay ilagay na natin nagiging exponent na 3 over 5. Second example, square root of 11. Kopyahin ang radicand na 11 raised to 1 over 2.
Derivation of the laws of radicals and application. It is important that we know kung paano ma-derive ang mga rules na ito, as they are the basis in simplifying radical expressions. For rule number 1, kapag daw yung power ng buong radical expression tsaka yung index magkamukha, ang answer dyan ay yung mismong base. At may dalawang possibilities dito, na yung una, kapag yung n ay even, at yung pangalawa, pwede maging odd. And magkaiba ang sagot ng dalawa. For example, sa odd, quantity the 5th root of 6 raised to the 5th power. Magkamukha ang index and power, kaya final answer dyan ay yung mismong base ng radicand, which is 6. Kaya yung final answer ay 6. At example naman sa even, square root of x square. Ang gagawin dito ay, kunin mo ang absolute value ng base, which is x. Magiging absolute value ng x. Ang magiging final answer niyan ay x. Kasi, gagawin mong positive ang absolute value ng x. For rule number 2, if a is a real number and m and n are integers for which the nth root of a is real, then, nagawa na natin to kanina, which is kinuha exponential form ng radical expression. Ang exponential form niyan ay a raised to m over n. Then, finactor out yung m at nilabas sa parenthesis. Kaya magiging a raised to 1 over n raised to m. Then, itong nasa labas na grouping symbol ay ginawang radical form. Kaya magiging nth root of a raised to m. Means, itong power ng radicand pwede maging power ng buong radical expression. For example, cube root of x squared. Base sa rule number 2, ang expression na to ay pwede maging exponential form. Kaya, maging x raised to 2 over 3. Tapos, pwede mo isulat na yung power ay nasa labas. Then, you're done. Then, sa rule number 3, for any positive integer n and real number a and b, una, ginawang exponential form, kaya magiging quantity of ab raised to 1 over n. Then, gamit ang raising a product to a power rule, yung bawat factor na a at b nakatanggap ng 1 over n. Tapos, ginawang radical form ang bawat factor, kaya magiging nth root of a at yung isa naman ay nth root of b. For example, the square of 75. Of course, 75 isn't a perfect square number. Isipin mo na perfect square factor ng 75. Anong dalawang number ang ipag-multiply mo at lalabas ay 75? Ang isa doon ay perfect square number. So yung isa, 25, at isa ay 3. At pag ipag-multiply mo, then the answer is 75. So the square of 25 and the square of 3, base sa rule number 3. At yung 25 ay perfect square number, kaya pwede lumabas ng radical sign. Kaya magiging fifth the square root of 3. And take note na wala na ang symbol ng multiplication dahil understood kapag meron kang numerical coefficient tas radical, yan ay multiplication. So the final answer is 5 the square root of 3. For rule number 4, for any positive integer n and real number a and b where b cannot be equal to 0. Ito ang derivation niya para mas makita ng maayos. Una, as always, gawin sila exponential form. Kaya the quantity a over b raised to 1 over n. Tapos gamit ang raising a quotient to a power rule, ang numerator and denominator makakatanggap ng 1 over n. Then, pwede silang maging radical forms pareho. Nth root of a over the nth root of b. For example, the square root of 13 over 16. Ang 13, pwede mong gawin the square root of 13. And yung 16 din. Ang 13, di mo siya masimplify dahil wala naman siyang perfect square. Yung 16 ay pwede. Kaya sagot dyan ay the square root of 13 over 4. For rule number 5, if m and n are positive integers for which all of the following roots are real, then mth root of nth root of a, kukunin natin ang exponential form ng radical expression. Pero unahin muna natin ang nasa loob. Sagot niyan ay the mth root of a raised to 1 over n. Tapos, kukunin ulit ang exponential form. Magiging a raised to 1 over n raised to 1 over m. Magiging the quantity of a raised to 1 over n raised to 1 over m. Gamit ang raising power to a power rule, pag-multiply ang 1 over n sa 1 over m. Magiging a raised to 1 over mn. At pwede na bumalik sa radical form. Yung mn ang magiging index, so magiging mnth root of a. For example, sixth root of 8, making the square root of the cube root of 8. At yung cube root ng 8 ay 2. Kaya final answer ay the square root of 2.
Simplifying radicals expression. Laging tandaan na ang laws of radicals ay kailangan upang masimplify ang radical expressions. A radical expression is in simplified form when there are no perfect n as factors of the radicand, there are no fractions inside the radicand, and there are no radical in the denominator. Tayo na simulan. Simplifying radicals expression. First example. The square root of 81. Gagawin natin dito is simplify this equation. Pero mas maganda pag alam ko na ang perfect square or perfect root upang madali na lang itong simplify. And the square root ng 81 is 9. And the answer in the first example is 9. Example 2. For the square root of 49. Gawin natin na ishayaan muna yung 4 kasi ang ibig sabihin lang yan is 4 times the square root of 49. Kaya unahin natin dito is simplify yung the square root of 49 and the answer is 7. At gagawin natin is 4 times 7, ang sagot is 28. And ang final answer sa example 2 is 28.
Adding and subtracting radicals expression. Always remember that only similar radical can be combined, and similar radical have the same indices and the same radicals. Here are some examples of pairs of radicals, and we need to identify whether it is similar or dissimilar. First example, the cube root of 5 and the cube root of 5. Parehas yung indices nila which is 3, and same din yung base nila which is 5, and they are similar. An example, the cube root of 10 and the square root of 10. The answer is dissimilar kasi magkaiba ang kanilang indices. In adding and subtracting similar radicals like radicals, add or subtract the coefficient of the similar radicals and then copy the common radical. Adding and subtracting similar radicals. In adding and subtracting similar radicals like radicals, add or subtract the coefficient of the similar radicals and then copy the common radical. Here is the example. The square root of 6 plus the square root of 6. Follow the process. Ang coefficient ng first term ay 1, yung pangalawang term ay 1. Then we add the first term and the second term. Then copy the common radicals. The square root of 6. 1 plus 1 is equal to 2 and copy the square root of 6. And the final answer is this 2 the square root of 6. Example number 2. 5 the cube root of 9 minus 2 the cube root of 9. We have the first coefficient is 5 and the operation that involved is subtraction. And 2 and the common radicals which is cube root of 9. 5 minus 2 is 3 at kopyahin ng radicals na the cube root of 9 and the final answer is 3 the cube root of 9. Adding and subtracting dissimilar. If the radicals are dissimilar, sometimes we need to simplify the radical expression. First, to make them similar, then perform the operation by applying the rule in adding and subtracting similar radicals. Example number 1, the square root of 50 plus the square root of 32. So gagawin natin ngayon, isi-simplify ang bawat term. First term, maghanap ka ng pinakamataas na perfect square factor which is the square root of 25 times 2. Simplify the second term and hanap ka ng pinakamalaking perfect square factor which is the square root of 16 times 2. The square root of 25 is 5 at yung the square root of 2 ay maiiwan sa loob. Plus, the square root of 16 which is 4 at maiiwan rin ng the square root of 2. Ang nangyari, naging similar radicals at pwede na silang i-combine. 5 plus 4 and copy the square root of 2. 5 plus 4 is 9 and then copy the square root of 2. The answer is 9 the square root of 2. Second example, we have 12 the square root of 3 plus the square root of 27 plus the square root of 75. Same process, simplify each term. Dahil ang first term ay naka-simplified form na ito, kapiin lang natin ng 12 the square root of 3. Then yung second factor, which is the square root of 27. Hanap tayo ng pinakamataas na perfect square root factor, which is the square root of 9 times 3. Second term, hanap tayo ng pinakamataas na factor ng 75, which is the square root of 25 times 3. Then simplify each term. Kopyahin lang ang 12 the square root of 3 dahil naka-simplified naman siya. Yung second term, meron siyang factor na 9, which is perfect square number. Then simplify, the square root of 9 is 3 at may 1 sa loob ng the square root of 3. Third term, 25 is perfect square number, magiging 5 the square root of 3. At meron na tayong similar radicals. Then pagsamahin mo na yung mga coefficient, we have 12 plus 3 plus 5 and copy the square root of 3. Then simplify, the answer is 20 the square root of 3. Ngayon, magpo-focus tayo sa multiplying radicals with the same indices. Para mas maintindihan natin, magbibigay kami ng example. Example number 1, the square root of 8 times the square root of 2. Dito, makikita pa lang natin na ang index or indices nila is magkamuka. Then, mangyayari nun is multiply the 2, which is the square root of 8 times the square root of 2 equals is the square root of 16. Then tignan mo if pwede pa siyang masimplify. Kaya ang tamang sagot is 4 and yan na ang sagot. Example number 2. We have the cube root of a raised to the 4th power b raised to the 5th power times the cube root of a raised to the 7th power b. Same process. Dahil magkapares naman sila ng indices, pag-multiply na natin. A raised to the 4th power times a raised to the 7th power. Magiging a raised to the 11th power and b raised to the 5th power times b equals is b raised to the 6th powers. Tapos, check natin if perfect cube sila. Yung 11 is not divisible by 3 and yung 6 is divisible by 3. So, hahanapin natin yung perfect square factor ang a raised to 11 power. Gagawin is kunin ng mga multiples ng index na 3. We have 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. Ang pinakamalapit at mababa sa 11 is 9. Kaya ang a raised to 11 power ay magiging a raised to 9 power times a raised to 2nd power. And copy the b raised to 6 power at ilabas natin ang mga perfect cube na factor. Ang a to the 9th power, copy mo lang yung base niya na a and yung 9, divide mo ang 3 at magiging 3 yung second factor at hindi perfect cube kaya may 1 sa loob and yung last is b raised to the 6th power. Kopyahin yung b and yung 6 divide by 3 which is 2 kaya and ang equation ay magiging a cube b squared the square root of a squared. At ngayon naman, tatalakayin natin on how to multiply radical expression with different indices. First example is the cube root of 5 times the square root of 2. Dito pa lang makikita na natin na hindi magkapareho yung indices. Yung una, ang indices niya is 3 and ang pangalawa, indices niya ay 2. Di natin mamumultiply itong dalawa until their indices are the same. Kaya dapat gawin natin, kunin natin ang least common multiple ng 3 and 2. Kinukuha ang LCM or least common multiple by getting the multiple of 3. Those are 3, 6, 9, 12, 15 at kaya ang LCM ng 3 and 2 ay 6. From 3, para maging 6 yan, kailangan natin siyang i-multiply by 2. Radical sign, 5. At itong 2 na factor na minultiply natin sa 3, sigurado ma-affect yan sa value kasi nagbago ang index from 3 to 6 At kailangan lang natin gawin is erase ang radicand to the same number kung saan natin multiply ang original index. Kaya itong 5 ay magiging 5 squared. Next, kung second factor na 2, ang index para maging 6 yan, kailangan natin na multiply by 3. At para ma-offset ang 3, dito kailangan natin erase ang radicand by 3. Next, simplify na ang dalawang factor which is 3 times 2 and 5 squared. Sa pangalawang factor is 2 times 3 and 2 cubed. Magiging siyang 6 root of 25 times 6 root of 8. At nagawa na natin ang kailangan natin gawin, which is na dapat magkamukha ang kanilang index. And now, pwede na natin silang i-multiply gamit ang multiplication property of radicals. Gawin natin is copy the 6 root and multiply the 25 and 8, and the answer is the 6 root of 200.
Dividing radicals with the same indices. Always remember, kapag ang radical natin ay may magkaparehong indices, we can simplify them by applying the division property of radicals na ang sabi, the nth root of x over the nth root of y is equal to the nth root of x over y. Let's have an example. The square root of 6 over the square root of 2. By applying it, becomes the square root of 6 over 2. And simplify becomes 3. Since hindi siya perfect square, yan na ang ating magiging answer, the square root of 3. Next example, we have the square root of 121 over 36. Since wala silang common factor na pwedeng i-divide sa kanila, we will do the other way. Tingnan natin ang division property na the nth root of x over y. Ibabalik natin siya sa dating form, which is the nth root of x over the nth root of y. Simplify lang, magiging siyang the square root of 121 over the square root of 36. Since same silang perfect square, we can take the roots, which is 11 over 6. Last example, we have the cube root of 7 over 27. Since ang form niya ay nasa the nth root of x over y, pwede natin siyang ibalik sa form na the nth root of x over the nth root of y. It will become the cube root of 7 over the cube root of 27. Since ang 7 ay walang perfect square factor, it will remain. And since 27 have cube root, which is 3, the final answer is the cube root of 7 over 3. Rationalizing the denominator. It is the process of eliminating the radical in the denominator. Let's have example. 2 over the square root of 5. First, we will multiply it to the square root of 5 over the square root of 5 na galing sa denominator nito. Simplify becomes 2 the square root of 5 over the square root of 25. Since ang 25 ay perfect square, it will become 5. And the final answer will becomes 2 the square root of 5 over 5. Another example, the square root of 7 over the square root of 3. Same process lang, copy the denominator and multiply becomes square root of 7 over the square root of 3 times the square root of 3 over the square root of 3. Simplify it will become the square root of 21 over the square root of 9. Since the 21 ay nakasimplified na, it will remain. And the 9 becomes 3. Final answer, the square root of 21 over 3. Dividing radicals with different indices. Yes. How to divide the square root of 3 by the cube root of 2? Since their both indices had difference, we can use the division property of radicals. The way to divide is rationalize the denominator. How can we rationalize? Think of one expression that is equal to 1 but is also a radical. What kind of radical? It depends to the denominator. Since the denominator is cube root, we need to multiply it to the expression of cube root over the cube root. Cube root of what? Since we are talking about the cube root, find their both cube numbers. Then choose the smaller number divisible to the radicals. To rationalize, we will multiply them to the cube root of 4 over the cube root of 4. In this way, we can get expression with the same indices. Since our both denominator had same indices, we can apply multiplication property of radicals. And how can we multiply the property of radicals in the numerator? Just copy the cube root of then simplify the 2 times 4. Since both numerator had different indices, we can't apply it. So just copy it to become the equation square root of 2 times the cube root of 4 over the cube root of 8. But the numerator has not yet simplified. To be simplified, get the LCM of the both indices, and their LCM is 6. Then apply to both and you will get 2 times 3 radical sine 3 raised to the third power times to the 3 times 2 radical sine 4 squared over 2. Then simplified. How can we simplify? Just times the indices 2 times 3 and 3 times 2. Then simplify the radicals to get the 6th root of 27 multiplied by the 6th root of 16 over 2. Since the numerator had already the same indices, we can now apply the multiplication property of radicals to be simplified the numerator. The equation will become the 6th root of 432 over 2. Then it is the final answer, because when the number 432 will go in factorization, it will be equal to 2 raised to the 4th power times 3 cubed, and there is no exponent higher or equal to the index.
Ang conjugate ang paglagay sa opposite operation sa dalawang terms. Ginagamit lang ito sa binomial. Halimbawa, x plus 4, ang conjugate nito ay pagpapalitin natin ang operation na binomial na ito, kaya magiging siyang x minus 4. Isa pang halimbawa ay ang the square root of 5 plus 2 the square root of 5. Pagkatapos nito ay kukunin lang natin ang product. Sa unang halimbawa, the quantity x plus 4 multiplied by the quantity x minus 4 ay x squared minus 16. Ganon din sa ikalawang halimbawa. The quantity square root of 5 minus 2 square root of 5 multiplied by the quantity square root of 5 plus 2 square root of 5 ay 5 minus 4 multiplied by 5 equals negative 15. Dumako naman tayo sa rationalizing a binomial denominator of radicals. Halimbawa, 3 over 3 plus square root of 6. Kailangan lang natin i-multiply ito sa sariling denominator. 3 all over 3 plus square root of 6 minus 3 minus square root of 6 over 3 minus square root of 6. At ang final answer ay 9 minus 3 the square root of 6 all over 3.